Hello, my name is Evan Spry, and I'm going to analyze the Arizona language development approach. So, Arizona has classified students into a category called English learners. These students are people who either don't have English as their second language or they just don't speak English. The idea is that these students, because of that, are unable to learn at the same level as their peers who are English speakers in the general education setting, so they need extra assistance. That can be provided through a number of models. One is the transitional bilingual education model. So this is where the first part of the day, students are being instructed in their native language academic content material. But then the second part of the day, they have an ESL instructor giving them targeted English instruction to help them. It's a 2 to 4 year program. The structured English immersion model, also known as SEI, is this where you have a teacher who is certified in their content area and as an ESL instructor. And this teacher is also fluent in the student's native language. So they would teach the class in English, but because they have the knowledge of the student's native language, if the student wants to ask them questions in their native language, the teacher would be equipped to answer those questions. There's the sheltered English instruction model. So this is where academic content is taught with a form of English that is catered to the student's proficiency levels. So this form of English might be more rudimentary than that in a general education setting. There's the ESL pull-out model, which is where students would have regular classes but receive an additional 3 to 10 hours of instruction with an ESL instructor to work on their English acquisition. There's content-based ESL. So this is where you have a teacher that would instruct academic content and ESL content separated from the general education setting, hopefully preparing those students to then enter the general education setting with their peers. This is more of an intensive model. Okay, Arizona has 4 principles of language development approach, and these are all based on the idea that students who are English learners are not liabilities in our classrooms, but they're assets. Learning 2 languages and being proficient in those languages is such a blessing, and we want to support our students to do just that. So, principle 1 of this language development approach is asset-based behaviors and expectations. This is the idea with that in mind, that our students are assets. We communicate with their families' expectations and we communicate with the students' expectations. And we encourage students through our responses to their work that they can be successful. Principle 2 is integrated instruction in disciplinary language and content. So it's the idea that teachers are going to differentiate their instruction so that they give the students opportunity to have different ways to demonstrate their command of the English language in the content area. Principle 3 is targeted and explicit language instruction. So we're going to give students a variety of different ways to even demonstrate that they have command of the English language. So not just differentiate the ways that we assess students and teach students, but we also give them differentiation in the ways that they demonstrate their command of their language, like reading, writing, listening, and speaking. Principle 4 is assessment, monitoring, and feedback. So this is the idea that teachers need to use formative assessments, summative assessments, and even take a look at state assessments to inform their teaching practice. The idea is teachers are constantly assessing so that they know how to best serve their students. So we talked about the SEI model earlier. There's a number of different ways that this is approved in the state of Arizona. One way is the pull-out method, and we kind of touched on it a little bit, but in more detail, an English language development specialist would come into the classroom and work with a small group of English learners, or they would pull those English learners out of the classroom, and that ELD specialist would work with those students outside of the classroom. There's the newcomer model. This is just for students who are born in another country and have been in U.S. schools for less than a year. There's the 2-hour model. This is where at the high school level, students have 100 minutes of English instruction a day, but the caveat is they can't miss math, ELA, science, or social studies to make room for this English instruction. There's the 50-50 dual language immersion model. This is 25 minutes a day of that targeted English instruction. 50% of the instruction, though, at some point in the student's day has to be in English. So that's the Arizona language development approach. Thank you for analyzing it with me.